Hey, you have Patrick Findoro, co-founder at Visa Franchise. Very excited to have on Kalani Hawks Villafranca, Texas-based U.S. immigration attorney. She focuses her practice on employment, investor, entrepreneur visas in the United States, has worked with clients throughout the world, especially from Latin America and Mexico, with our southern border there. And she's helped clients invest in their own businesses, invest in franchises, buy in a business, all different types of businesses for the E2 visa, for the E1 trader visa. But in today's focus, we're going to go through the E2 visa and how you can obtain an E2 visa through franchising. And Kalani will touch on further details for those that are looking to also acquire a business or do their own startup. But today's focus is principally on how you can move to the United States by buying an existing franchise or starting a franchise from zero. Kalani will go through some slides on U.S. immigration, on the E2 visa, and then afterwards, I'll go through our web portal, vettedbiz.com, where there's 5,000 plus franchises, also businesses for sale, as well as a bit on Visa Franchise, a firm that I started with my younger brother, Jack, 7 years ago. So Kalani, I really appreciate you joining today.
It's so nice to be here with you. And I love being able to talk about this kind of case because it's so flexible. It gives the client such control over their future in the US, which is beautiful. But there's also a lot of uncertainty and misinformation and lack of clarity. So I love to be here with you today to go over what it's about, what a potential client needs to know to think about, is this something they really want to do? Is this something that's right for them and their families? And to then really take the next step. And okay, let's buy the business. Let's find a business. Let's start it. Let's do what we can to start our future in the United States. So happy to be here to share all that info today.
And anyone that has questions for Kalani or myself, just please leave it in the comment section. And depending on the number of questions, and if it's related to the topic that we're discussing at that moment, we'll answer the questions on spot, or if not, we'll answer the questions at the end of today's presentation. Mm-hmm. So Kalani, I'm gonna just remove myself and you can go through these slides, and then I'll jump in as there's relevant questions from the audience.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Patrick. So first and foremost, what is an E2 visa? So we're going to talk a lot about the E2 visa today, commonly known as the investor visa. The E2 allows a foreign national to move to the United States to run their US-based business. So the most important thing to know is you have to have a business. In other countries, you can get investor visas through real estate investment. You just buy a house, you get your visa, great. That's not possible in the United States. You have to really have a business that is active and it does something. So with that in mind, let's move forward and figure out, okay, what does this really take to make happen? Why do we care? I love to go through this with my clients because once you really understand the E2 visa, you can see how powerful it is for you and your family. The E2 investor gets a work permit to work in the e-visa business. But your spouse, if you're married, is going to get an unrestricted US work permit, which is amazing for families where both members of the couple want to continue to pursue their careers. It also allows us to get creative with which spouse is the investor who's locked to the business and which spouse has unrestricted work permission in the US. So as you start to think about this, you can start to see how creative this could be for your family if you're in this situation. Each country has their own treaty with the United States to support these visas. Well, not all. Most countries have treaties with the United States to support these visas. The first thing you need to know if you're eligible is your country on the list of treaty countries that supports investor visas with the US. Mexico, Spain, Canada, the UK, there are a ton, I think 70 something countries on this list, but you have to make sure yours is there. The length of your visa is going to depend on that treaty. So they can be up to 5 years. If you're from Spain, your visa is for 5 years. If you're from Mexico, it's 4 years. Each country and each treaty has its own provision. But you don't just get your visa for that period of time. You can renew your visa over and over and over and over again forever, as long as your business is still functioning well and profitable in the US. So you can see, compared to other visas like the L visa or the TN visa, which starts to be a little time limited if you're here too long. The E visa can be really flexible for you if you want to be in the US for a long time. Okay. It's also faster than a lot of other options because you go directly to the consulate or embassy in your home country to get your visa, which is great. You don't have to go through step one, which is US based and USCIS immigration permission first. Now, when you get to a place where you're about to do this case, and you can talk to your attorney, look at all the different options available for you, but generally you're going to go directly to your home consulate or embassy, and that's going to be a faster process, which is wonderful. I've got some high level requirements here. This is everything you need to know to really get a clear picture of what it means to have a US investor visa, an E2 visa. Like we just talked about, you got to get that treaty between your country and the United States. Make sure the treaty exists and that it exists for the E2 visa, and you need to know how long it is. Because if it's only a year, you want to know that before you invest the time and money, right? If it's 5 years, okay, now the risk is a lot better for you in moving forward with this case. So start with that. Then you need a US business. Any kind of business is going to work. We're going to go into this a little more detail in a couple more slides, but almost anything works as long as it's an active business, which means you get to be in control. You can buy a franchise. You can start your own business that you've created from your mind and from step one. You can buy an existing business. Just about anything's going to work in this frame of mind. Then you have to put money into your business. That's the big question everybody has is how much money? The law does not have a minimum amount of money you have to invest. What the law says instead is that you have to invest a substantial amount of money, and substantial is measured by how much money your business actually needs to function. As immigration attorneys and practitioners in this field, I imagine Patrick might have a similar outlook on this. We often say that $100,000 is kind of a break point above which you're getting much more certainty about having a strong case. That doesn't mean you have to have a $100,000 investment, but below that, your case can be harder to win depending on the business. Patrick, do you have thoughts on that? And what do you tell the folks that come to you?
I think, it shouldn't be like this, but I think in reality, if you're applying from Canada or Mexico, 80, 100K should fly. But if you're applying from some countries where there's been issues with E2 visa candidates in the past, like Argentina, more like 150, 175, Egypt, Pakistan, Turkey, 150 plus. So it shouldn't be like that. But what we've seen is that it does depend consulate to consulate in terms of what that numerical credibility going into the application is. But yeah, I mean, we've had clients apply with 70K, but we've also had clients denied at 70K, and they invested another 40K and got approved. So I think a big part is, invest as much as really makes sense for the business. The more, the better. And if your risk tolerance is higher and you're really tight on cash, sure, you could potentially try with less, but just, it's going to make Kalani's job harder and everyone's job harder to get you across the finish line.
And that's exactly what I say to my clients is how risky are you, right? Like, I'm really conservative. For my case, I'd file a conservative case for myself, but that's why I'm the attorney. Other people may want to, be a little more risky. Well, this is how much I want to invest. Let's see if it happens. If not, I can invest more and reapply. But Patrick made such a good point there, which is you have to know your local consulate or embassy. And that's on the last slide here is how do you have success in these cases is you need to know where you're filing. Because a case in Mexico City is not the same as a case in London. Is not the same as a case in Buenos Aires. I wish it were. Perhaps it should be. And the law is the same everywhere you file. But each location has their own way of looking at these cases and their own expectations about what they want to see. So it's important to work with trusted professionals who understand the landscape in the place where you're going to file your case to ensure success, or as close to a surety of success as you can get. So going through our requirements over here, you're going to invest a substantial amount of money in your US business. And we have to show that your business is real and active. So this comes up a lot when I have clients come to me and want to invest in real estate. Real estate can kind of be a red flag for immigration because often what real estate means is a passive investment. That doesn't mean you can't ever win your E2 case with a real estate related business. I have clients who are doing land development or property management, and those things are real estate adjacent, but they're not just passive real estate holdings. So keep in mind, you have to have a real and active business. Can't just be money in a bank account. What you got to show is, what does your business do? What service do you offer? What product do you sell? Where and to whom? And how do you generate money? And talking about generating money, You have to be able to show your business is going to be profitable. The word in the law is marginality. The consular official is going to make sure that your business is not marginal. What that means is that the consular official is a US government official who's been tasked with looking at these businesses and supporting E2 visas for businesses that are going to make a positive impact on the US economy. So you have to prove to that official your business is actually going to do that, and that it's not just a business that is going to make money to support you and your family so that you can live in the United States. If that's all the business is going to do, it will be considered marginal and it'll be denied. So the ways that you prove your business is profitable and has a positive impact on the economy: revenue generation, job creation, taxes paid, these kinds of things. So you want to be able to show your business really does something and will grow over time. You have to be able to direct and control your business. Generally, any amount of involvement in your business is going to work for this. And then last but not least, you have to prove you're going to leave. If your E2 status runs out at some point in time, you have to go home. That's because this is a non-immigrant visa. It means it does not, on its own, lead to a green card or citizenship. Now, Patrick and I both have had experiences where we've had clients inside the US on an E2 visa. They have become eligible for some other type of immigration green card path, and they've applied for that from their E2 visa and gotten the green card. But the E2 itself doesn't provide a path to residency or citizenship. And the government needs to know that if your E2 visa runs out, you will in fact go home. So that's it. That's the high level E2. Of course, there's much more to it, but those are all the requirements you need to know.
And Kalani, quick question from Romina. Do I need to submit a business plan for my E2 visa application?
Yeah, so that depends on your consulate or embassy. Most of my clients file in Mexico, and we have to file a business plan for their cases. We're required. It really depends on the case. If it's not required, but you have a brand new business, I would always suggest you do so, because it lends quite a bit of credibility to your case to have this professionally prepared, beautiful business plan showing financial growth over time. If you have an existing business, say you have a business that's been in existence for 10 years, you have a history of growth, it's really profitable, a ton of commercial activity in the US, and your post doesn't require a business plan, I think you can get away with not filing it and see how it goes, unless you're just quite conservative and you want to file. Patrick, what has been your experience?
Great question. I would say like 95% of our clients have a business plan writer, and there's companies that charge as little as like $1,800, $2,000. So it's a pretty well worth expense, and it goes towards a substantial investment amount. So I do strongly encourage people to have that business plan. And yeah, of course, there's exceptions. If you're buying an existing business and the tax return showed 150K of net income the last year, it might not be required in that case.
And I would say something that you touched on, and I think is really important, is that there are companies whose whole job is to create business plans for immigration. And I've started insisting that my clients work with them, because I've had clients write their own business plans, and they're fantastic business plans, but they don't match the needs for immigration. Like when you hear business plan, you think, oh, it's just like any other business plan. But really, immigration's using the word business plan, but what they mean is proof of all these immigration things in business plan format. So it really behooves you to work with a professional business plan writer who knows exactly what they're doing and will save you time and energy and just make it beautiful.
Yeah, and also that knows like the requirements at that post. So if it's in Ciudad Juarez or Mexico City, there's a certain page count. If it's in London or Paris, there might be a different page count. So how do you condense the business plan and give the business plan in the format that kind of consulate staff really likes to consume the information to give the ultimate approval?
Yeah, I think that's right. I also think it lends some credibility. If there's a business plan that's created by the attorney or by the client, it looks very self-serving, right? Like if you have a third party helping you prepare that, it looks quite a bit more credible.
Definitely.
So we talked about the need for a treaty between your country and the United States. If you want to figure out if your country is on that list, you can go to the Department of State's website. They have a list of all the treaty countries. And you want to make sure it says E2 next to your country's name, because there is an E1 visa and an E2 visa, and this list is going to have both. And right now we're just talking about E2s, but it's pretty easy to figure out if your country's on there or not. But keep in mind, it changes over time. So I spoke with somebody this week whose country used to be on the list and is not now, and they didn't realize that. So it's important to check that list now. If you've heard 10 years ago somebody from your country got an E2 visa, make sure it's still on there before you pursue your case. All right, so foreign investor. This is an investment visa. So you have to be a citizen of the treaty country. What that means is we can get creative here too. So say you're a citizen of India, which does not have an investor visa, but you're married to a citizen of the UK. Fantastic. Now your spouse may be able to apply as the citizen investor, and you can apply as their spouse. So keep in mind that you're both members of the couple need to consider their citizenship to see if you might be eligible for an investor visa. You need to own at least 50% of your US business. There are exceptions to this rule, but this is a high level overview and we're not going into exceptions right now. It is possible to get a visa with less than 50% ownership if you qualify for an executive or specialized employee visa, but we're just focused on owners today. And so for that, you want to own 50% of your business. You then need to be the person who owns at least half the business and invests money in the US business. And then you're the one in charge. You're actually calling the shots and you're running the show. Your US business can be anything. New business that you've created with your own investment, the purchase of an existing business, though please be quite careful, because if you're only looking to invest $200,000-$300,000, businesses for sale at that amount of money often are not healthy businesses. I know that Patrick has had experience with this, and you guys at Visa Franchise and your partner agencies that kind of vet, is it Vetted Biz? Patrick, your business that looks into this, and maybe you can speak about the value of these low value companies.
We have a crazy amount of data on existing businesses for sale, as well as 5,000 plus franchises. And what we've seen, and we talked before starting, like if a business is for sale less than 500K or even less than $1 million, usually and you're buying that business not from a corporation, like not directly from the franchisor or not from some bigger conglomerate. They're running it in a way that's operating the gray, even in a legal way, where there are employees that they're paying as contractors. There are people that should be contractors that they're paying in cash and not filing the right tax form. And they could be under declaring or not declaring their tax returns. So it's kind of again, like, what's your risk tolerance? And does that sound like your American dream? For those that are focused on buying an existing business, I strongly recommend you to buy it from a corporation, a business that's going to stay around, and they're divesting, one of their locations. It could be like a food chain, food franchise, or just an independent chain, and you're buying one of it from a corporation, rather than just buying from an individual that could be doing something funny with the business, and you might not know until after that there could be some liabilities. So it's going to also take more time. There are obviously diamonds in the rough that you could find an existing business for sale that's for 200,000 that makes 150K a year, but generally you're going to spend significantly more time than if you were to buy from a corporation or buy an existing or start a franchise where you have the data.
And the legal requirements are also quite clear on this. If you buy an existing business, you have to show that you paid fair market value. So you need to be quite careful. Don't buy a business from your buddy who's going to give you a discount, because then you will not have met your legal standard of investing a substantial amount of money in a US business. And so I require all my clients who are thinking about purchasing a business to get an independent business evaluation from an independent party who's not in any way interested in the purchase or the sale. And then we will use that at the consulate. But oftentimes that's where this falls apart, because once you actually get a third party involved, it can be clear that the business isn't as represented. But that's also why
the same party can also do the vetting of reconciling their bank statements with the QuickBooks, and even go on site and see that there's actually that many customers going in. So we've worked with a few providers in the past. It's not cheap. It's going to be more expensive than like that business plan writer that I mentioned, about the 2,000 level. It's more like 3 to 5K. Could definitely be less, but for someone that has that CPA, chartered public accountant, it's gonna cost quite a bit to do that due diligence on the business.
Yeah. But this is certainly where a franchise purchase comes into play and can be a much more attractive option if somebody's able to work with your company or another person who is able to help them really understand the value of the franchise, because it can be a much, from my perspective, I haven't been in franchise, but having seen them for my clients, and especially for people who have not run a business before, it comes with an owner's manual, right? Here's exactly what you do to run this business. And some franchises are great and some franchises are terrible. But if you work with somebody to help you find a good one, it can be a really good option for your US business, because it kind of sets you up on a roadmap to know, okay, there is a path to profitability. We know how to make this work. And some people like that, some people don't. But for people who are interested in that, it's a really good path and can avoid some of those risks of a business sale from an individual who you don't really know as well.
I would say too, it's like almost the E2 is like that soft landing in the US where it's the bridge where a franchise, we tell our clients after 18, 24 months, you're going to decide if this is something you're going to spend the next 10 years of your career on, or if you're going to put a day-to-day manager in place and maybe, do something else and allocate more of your time to another venture. And you can work with Kalani and the E2 Visa business plan writer to allocate an initial application that you're going to be doing other activities. But it's a good starting point to get a soft landing in the United States. And it also gives the ability to hire that day-to-day manager to then transition to another business. And working with Kalani, you can also transition your visa status to a different green card, one of the green card categories.
Yeah, we do that a lot. And that's something, Patrick, I know you've seen, and this happens for my clients as well, is the E2 is a stepping stone. So it's not a direct path to a green card, but once you're inside the United States, often you have a lot more control about building, especially if you've started your own business, and building your business in a way that sets you up for some sort of green card success, or your spouse is able to look for work and get sponsorship from an outside employer in a way that wasn't possible while you lived abroad. And so this E2 allows you to kind of get here, establish your career, make connections, and see what your next step is. And that's really powerful and really useful for a lot of families.
And then, Kalani, we had a question. What percentage of E2 visa applications are approved?
That's a great question. We need to look at the Department of State statistics.
We looked at it like over a year ago, and the final approval was 92%. But keep in mind that you might have got denied, or there might have been a request for further information. And then also in that are the executive E2s that Kalani briefly touched in, but Siemens, for example, sending tons of German managers as E2 visa or specialized employees, and they're getting approved at like 100%. So for the entrepreneur, it's not 92%. It's definitely lower. How lower? They don't disclose the gap there.
They don't, but I will say there are some kinds of visas. When people come to me, I will say, look, these visas are heavily scrutinized. You need to know going in that it's like a 50-50 chance, like it's an uphill battle. The E is not one of them. This is a winnable case. If you consult with a trusted attorney, that attorney looks at your case and says, this is a strong case, let's file it, you should expect an approval. This is not, no attorney can guarantee that, right? It's the consular official who makes that decision. But I will say, this is not a case that I get anxious and worried about for my clients. I evaluate it. If it's strong, I file it, and I expect to win it. Because this is not the kind of case that is currently getting heavy scrutiny right now. There are other cases like that. This is not one of them.
I think for non-immigrant visas, if my memory serves me correct, it has the highest approval rate for non-immigrant.
That wouldn't surprise me.
So there are some green card categories that have higher approval rates, but for a non-immigrant category, I believe the E2 is the highest.
So let's talk here about substantial investment. This is everybody's number one question, and I wish I could give you a straight answer, but it doesn't exist. There's no minimum amount of money needed in the law. What you need to think about is, what's my business? How much money does my business need? And what's going to look good to the consular official? So those are the two important questions. I always like to give this example to clients. If you're going to open a manufacturing facility to make automobiles, you're going to need millions of dollars of investment to actually open that business. That's going to be very expensive. And so that's going to be your minimum investment, is however much money you need to, the molds and the parts and the factory and everything. It's tons of money. If you're going to open a small flower shop in a local mall in a rural location, you do not need that much money to open it. In fact, you probably might need to invest more than you actually need to get to a high enough number that it looks meaningful to a consular official. So it's all a strategy decision. Keep in mind, all your professional fees count towards your investment. So my legal fees count, anything you pay to Visa franchise counts, anything you pay to your CPA counts. So this all adds up in your substantial investment number. The $100,000 safety point is something we hear a lot. I've heard that a lot from clients who come to me and say, I have to invest $100,000. As Patrick was mentioning earlier, and he's 100% correct, it's much more important to know what the local officials in your home country care about instead of looking at this $100,000, because it's meaningless outside of the context of your business and the location where you're going to file. And professionals who have worked in those areas will be able to guide you more on that.
And one thing for a franchise, in the item 7 of the franchise disclosure document, they disclose what the costs are to start a franchise. So it will be a range of like, say, 80 to 150K. And that includes the franchise fee, rent deposit, working capital for 3 months or 6 months, basically the time it would take to break even, the accounting fees, legal fees. So everything's included in that. And some of our clients have brought the physical printed copy of the franchise disclosure document. And if there's any pushback, especially if they're trying to apply at like 80K, it's like, hey, look, this franchise system has 400 other franchisees, and this is from this year, 2022. And this isn't me just making this up. This is what this franchisor that's regulated by the FTC and also on the state-by-state level is saying are the costs to start this business. And item 19 of the franchise disclosure document, many franchises will disclose their sales figures. So that's been a pushback, and you'll talk about marginality where, okay, does this business have the potential to make real money? And if you have that item 19, hey, it's not me saying it. This is what another 100 plus franchisees are making. And this is the numbers you can expect in year 1, year 2, year 3.
And as an attorney, I love that. When I have a franchise purchase that I am using as the support for the E2, it's beautiful because it's again, a third party who's independently supplying this information. Okay, now obviously the franchisor is an interested third party, but FTC has all these regulations about the information they have to disclose and how they have to share it. And it's so helpful because, for exactly what Patrick said, it's not me saying it's enough. It's not my client saying enough. The franchisor said, you need $120,000 to open this business, and that's how much I've spent. Here we go. And it's great. It's so much easier to sell that case when you have someone else backing you up on those numbers.
And Kalani, on the substantial investment now, we have a question from Kevin. Will 150K be enough? Besides that, what other costs do I have to take into account?
So 150K certainly could be enough. I've done plenty of cases below that amount of money that have been approved. We would need to know what your business is that you're investing in to make sure that 150K is actually substantial and meaningful enough to open your business. And we need to know where you want to file. So are you from Mexico? Are you from London? And where are you from? And make sure that that's going to be enough in your location. It probably will be. In most locations, that's going to be sufficient. And what other costs do I need to take into account? I love that you mentioned this because it's so important. This is an investment in your future, and this is a real business. You have to think of it not just as a path to a visa, but you really want to be professional and thorough in how you run your business. And so it's possible that you will have, and even expected that you will have, several business related costs associated with your application. But they may be included in that 150, but you should think about them, not just the actual day-to-day running of your business, but you'll probably need a CPA. And you may need a business attorney for entity formation purposes. You'll probably need an immigration attorney. So anything related to the startup of a business is something you should really keep in mind, and is all spending that we can use to put towards your substantial investment. Patrick, anything else that you've seen come up really frequently as costs for your clients that they might not have thought about on the front end?
The travel costs come into the States, hotel, flights. I mean, that can easily get up if you're coming with your family or your spouse could be your business partner. That could be 10, 20K. So keep those receipts and any of the costs associated with finding, analyzing the business, visiting the franchisor, visiting franchisees, all those upfront costs to study the market should count towards the E2 visa investment.
Yeah, keep everything. Keep documents of everything. Because your attorney at the end may choose, oh, we're not going to use this or that or this or that, but always keep everything and leave that decision to your attorney. because I tend to use almost everything my clients send me, because the more the better.
And then have money on the side. Like you don't want to have a
Mhm.
situation where you're investing your last 80, 100K. We say
Mhm.
at least 50K. And
Mhm.
if you're living in LA, it's going to be more than if you're living in Dallas,
Yeah.
Texas. So you
Yeah,
have
that's a
to make
really good
sure you
point.
know how much money.
That's a really good point, is keeping, like, assume that your business is not going to be profitable in the first 1 to 2 months, because most businesses are not. That's not the trajectory of most businesses. It's probably not what you represented in your business plan as your kind of break even profitability point, maybe 6 months or a year down the road. Do you have enough money to live and support your family and the lifestyle that you want until then? And keeping in mind, sometimes I like to make sure my clients really have enough money in the business bank account to look credible, right? You don't want to have invested $120,000 and have $2,000 in your business bank account and claim that you have enough money to run your business. It's going to be hard to sell that. It doesn't look very credible.
Yeah. I see usually 10 to 30K of working
Mhm.
capital.
Yeah.
And then we have
Yeah.
a
It doesn't have
question.
to be a ton, but you don't want to have nothing.
And then we have a question from Isra. Do I have
Mhm.
to file from the country of my citizenship, or can I file from the country I live in, the country of residence? For example, Canadian living in the UAE.
Mhm. That's a fantastic question. And it's really up to the country of residence where you are if they'll accept your case. Most consulates will accept anybody who's a citizen and anybody who's a lawful resident in that country. Now, sometimes you get into a bit of trouble if you live in a country that doesn't have a treaty. So say you live in India and you're trying to file an E2 visa in India, and India is going to say, we don't know how to do these. We don't do these here. We're not going to accept your case for filing here, even though you're a UK citizen. So it'll be according to the rules of that consulate, which you can usually find on their webpage. Every US mission abroad and in whatever country where you're living, so UAE, will have guidance on who they will accept for filing. And if they don't, they usually have an emails that you can email and ask, and they'll respond generally. All right. Um, I want to make sure we touch on the at-risk investment. You have to spend money before you ask for your visa, and this is the scariest part of this process. I'll explain the process to clients, and they're like, oh, so we need to be abroad and spend $150,000 and then hope we get the visa. And it's really scary. But the law actually contemplates this. The law says your money has to be at risk before you apply. There are some ways to mitigate this. I've had clients who have purchased franchises and have written agreements with the franchisor saying it's 100% binding agreement unless my visa is denied, and then it's reversible. Patrick, how often do you see that kind of agreement with the franchisors that you work with?
Usually, if they usually it's somewhere in the middle where maybe like half the franchise fee or some part of the franchise fee is
Mhm.
contingent on the E2 visa approval,
Mhm.
or at least that the client would have to apply twice. It used to be the
Mhm.
case that it'd be like 100%, and when E2 visas were
Mhm.
getting approved in 2 weeks, 4 weeks. But
Yeah.
now, it only takes a franchisor to get burned once or to have a major delay in their candidate getting
Mhm.
the E2 visa, where they don't want to lock up the territory with someone that's not going to be able to open for 9 months. So many
Mhm.
franchises are not even available for E2 visa investors right now, unless they get a strong confirmation that you're going to actually be able to live here soon and start working in the business. So
Mhm.
case by case, we always try to push for it,
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
can't, strong arm the
Mhm.
franchisor too much,
Yeah.
especially as you'll be their effective business partner for the next 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a great point that you made, Patrick. Thinking about processing times right now, immigration is no different than the rest of the world and has been heavily impacted by COVID. And processing times have gotten quite a bit slower in much of the world, many of the US consulates and embassies, because of COVID closures, because of reduction in staffing, delays. And so it's really important if you're thinking about an E2 visa, don't wait until a couple of months before you want to be in the US. Start 6 months, a year and a half before you want to move here. Talk with trusted professionals who understand how long it's going to take in your country. And so you have really, really very clear and realistic expectations about when you might be able to move. And also keep in mind that these processing times fluctuate. A year ago, Mexico City was taking 3 weeks, and now they're taking 9 to 12 months. So things change massively over time. In other locations, I've seen it go the other direction, where it was taking a year and now it's taking 2 months. But that's going to really heavily impact your experience. So here on the screen, we have the investor visa process. At a high level, we've got 5 big steps. You apply with your US consulate in your home country. Now, There are ways to apply from within the US, and that is something that is absolutely worth talking about if you're in the situation where your home country has effectively shut down E2 visas. Colombia, for example, is just like pretending that they don't know what an E2 visa is, and they're not answering their phone and they're not scheduling interviews. And it's been like that since March of 2020. If you're Colombian, you may want to think about applying from within the US, even though under normal circumstances, I wouldn't recommend that for reasons we're not going to go into today. It's just kind of a little messier, not as great of an outcome, but it's a lot better than no visa, which is kind of what's happening in Colombia right now. So generally you want to apply from your home country though, if you can make that happen. And you'll get an appointment for your fingerprints, and then you'll be called in for an interview at the US consulate or embassy in your home country. And your attorney should prep you for that interview to help you understand the key points in your case and how to speak about those key points with respect to your business. And usually you find out during that interview that you've been approved, or that they're going to hold your case because they want more info. We always want an approval. And then depending on where you are, it'll take you 2, 3, 4 days, maybe 2 weeks to get your passport back with your visa in it. Once you get your visa, you can enter the US and immediately start working in your US business. And if you have a spouse, your spouse can immediately start working anywhere else they want to in the United States. Their spouse E2 visa is their work permit. All right, let's see what's next. How to succeed with your E2 visa via franchise or otherwise. And these are the things we've touched on a little bit already, but you need to have the right team. This is not an isolated immigration experience. You need to have a good immigration attorney, a good business advisor, a good CPA, whoever else is needed for your business to be successful. You want to make sure you've identified those people and that they're working together as a team. You want to start early. Do not wait or you're going to be disappointed. You want to start earlier than expected so you have plenty of runway. And then know your home country rules. Like we've talked about many, many times. I can't stress enough how important knowing your home country's preferences with respect to the E2 visa is so important to ensure your success. All right. And that's it.
Kalani, we have a question, and I'll quickly go through Vetted Biz, and go through how people can access and actually look at franchises. And then we can touch on other questions. But
yeah,
we have from Kyung, what questions will be asked during the in-person interview at the U.S. consulate? Can you help us in this way?
Yeah. So when I prep my clients, I give them a list of questions that are broken down by eligibility. So we had one of these slides that showed kind of the 7 eligibility questions. The big things there they care about are making sure you are who you say you are, the business is really active, you know how to talk about the business, and then it's going to make money. So a lot of, if you've represented in your case, you already have an employee. I'm thinking about my most recent interview. My client was asked, who is Maria? Because we put something about employees on the thing and making sure he really knew about his business and he knew about the person that we put in here. And where is your office lease? And how many trucks do you have? And what do you plan to do? And what's your background? Really high level, easy to answer questions if you really are the business person and you're involved in the business.
All right. I'm going to quickly go through our platform, and then if there's other questions, please ask them in the chat and we'll get back to them at the end with Kalani, or if it's more business related with myself. So 1 second here. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. All right. So I had mentioned that my brother and I started Visa Franchise back in 2015. We're really here to help you find and analyze the right business for the E2 visa, save you time, so less time that you're going to have to dedicate to the process, as well as a period of time that it takes you to find that business, invest in that business, and get the visa. So everything should be done within a year. Many of our clients are investing in the business, getting their visa closer to like 3-4 months. It's going to depend a lot on how much time it takes you to make a decision on the business, as well as consulate processing times that unfortunately we cannot control. So we have a very tight process. I won't get into today every step, but we're with you every step of the way until you invest in the business, open the business, and have your E2 visa. And we also help folks with the EB5 visa with a significantly higher investment amount at $800,000 right now. So Visa Franchise is a paid service. We work on a consultative basis for up to 1 year. And again, we're with you every step of the way. We have a client manager, an assistant to be on your case, working with you daily, as well as I'm checking on your case at least once a week to make sure that things are progressing. We also have a sister platform, Vetted Biz. For Vetted Biz, we have access to 5,600 businesses, franchise, I should say, as well as another 5,000 businesses for sale, principally in the state of Florida. Why Florida for businesses for sale? Unfortunately, most states, including Texas, they don't have a repository of businesses for sale like Florida does, where you have a buyer broker and a seller broker splitting the commission. Visa Franchise does not act as a business broker, although we do have business brokers in the state of Florida that we'd be happy to connect you with. In other states like Texas, California, it's going to require a lot more of your time picking up the phone, reaching out to business listings, talking to many different business brokers until you find that business, as well as a lot more time on the due diligence side. So we have that option here, business for sale, or you have the option for franchises. And we're building out a list of about 300 franchises that are open to working with E2 Visa investors, and that's available for the Vetted Biz members that sign up for relatively low rate of about $80 a month. And with that, you have access to a lot more details in terms of the success of the franchise, the contact information, so you could reach out directly to the franchisor. So just giving a brief example of Subway, where a franchise that everyone knows, we got a lot of inquiries. Subway at this time does not accept E2 Visa investors, and I think that's a blessing because Subway is a dying franchise system. They close over 1,000 locations every year. I'll make my screen a little bigger. In 2020, they closed 1,800 locations. And over the last 4 years, we are putting the 2021 numbers in now, it's like 7,000 locations closed. So yes, they're still opening locations, but they're closing locations at a much higher rate. We go through the key financials, for how many are being sold. So a lot of people are getting out of the system, 3 times the average. And then the failure rates, pretty much double the average for franchises over a 3-year period. Over a 3-year period, 21% of Subway franchises are failing, which is, and the industry standard is 12% for food and beverage, while all franchises, the median is 11%. So you can browse Vetted Biz for free. There's also there's also an option where you pay a $79 fee and you get a lot more access to data, including contact information, failure rate. We're adding in payback period, average owner compensation. So there's a lot of really valuable information that we're adding to Vetted Biz. Principally, it's Americans that are leveraging Vetted Biz, those that are investing in whole franchise systems, buying just one franchise, selling franchises. But if you're looking to move to the United States through the E2 Visa, it's a really good source for finding and analyzing franchise eligible for the E2. You're going to have to do the territory checks yourself. But if you'd want us to be with you every step of the way, as well as we offer a solution to not only verify that the business is going to be a good fit for you in terms of the model, we can also get you an operator in place, someone to handle the day-to-day affairs. You're still going to have a strategic role, president, probably CFO, and you'll be in monthly meetings as well as approving major expenses and driving the strategy of the business. But this is a good service for those that have a higher net worth. Maybe they're going to have to be traveling back and forth to their home country. They have a business there and they can't dedicate 40, 50 hours a week to the business in the United States. And this solution provides them a smooth transition to the States where they can work minimal hours on a weekly basis, maintain their E2 visa status, maintain their business back home, and focus on their family's transition to the States. So there's a lot of different options here. We like to provide a lot of information, principally for free, And then if you want us to execute with you, then we charge a substantial fee for that work. It looks like we got a lot of questions come in, and maybe we'll take 3, and then we'll be sure to include Kalani's contact information as well as our contact details, and we can arrange a follow-up consultation. From Pablo, does that mean I would only need half the money required for that franchise business plan?
This is such a good question, Pablo, because we have to have at least 50% ownership by a foreign national from the treaty company. So if that's you, you have to own at least 50% of your business. Your business partner can be an American citizen or permanent resident, but you have to own, or people from your country have to own 50%. Does that mean I would only need to put up half the money required? Maybe. We still need to show that you have invested a substantial amount. So if the franchise only requires 80,000 and you only put up 40, it's going to be really hard for me to argue with a straight face to a consular official that $40,000 is a substantial amount of money that puts you with enough skin in the game to win your case. So that's a strategy decision based on how much is needed. And I will say I frequently have 50-50 partners who each put up half the amount of money. But if that's the case, I'd like to see each of them put up at least 75,000. We also have to analyze the business itself, but it's possible in this situation to kind of get you to a good solution. But you got to do it. Don't do it without trusted counsel. Like that's a situation where you really need to make sure you have good advice about how much you need to spend and how you represent that case properly.
And probably a big part's marginality. Like if you got to have a lot of jobs, like if the business isn't making that much money, you better be hiring a lot of Americans.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We didn't talk about marginality much, but that's really critical because it doesn't come up often at the first stage because you're going to have these financial projections and you will have made them look beautiful and optimistic. But if your business really isn't making any money, you don't have any employees at that renewal stage, you're going to get a denial. So you need to know from the front end, you can make this business successful, have employees, have revenue, have profitability so that you don't get stuck in a marginality problem 5 years from now.
Yeah, and that's come up from the onset with particular situations where it's 2 investors and the business is going to have like, a couple employees, 5 contractors, but it's going to take a while to start making serious money. It could take 4 or 5 years, and that's going to require a higher investment amount and really work with Kalani and the business plan writer to show you're having such a big contribution with all these employees because you have big companies like Siemens or Michelin that maybe they don't have a profitable year, they have a few years of loss, but they're having such a big contribution to the U.S. economy that they're still getting their E2 visas approved. But ideal situation, I guess, would be you're making a lot of money and you're hiring a lot of Americans.
Yes, absolutely. Am I able to bring my spouse and my children on the E2 visa? Yes, absolutely. And on your visa application, you will add your spouse and any children under 21. They will all be included with you. Your spouse will immediately have U.S. work permission to work anywhere in the United States with your spouse's E2 visa, and your children can go to public schools or private schools wherever they want in the United States.
And we'll just we'll do this question, then just one more.
Is there an option of investing into an existing business instead of franchising or purchasing a business? Yes, though you need to be strategic about how you do this, because if you have an existing business and it's been around for 10 years and people have already invested $3 million into this business and you invest 150,000, your investment is not going to be proportionately impressive or substantial enough to win your case. So that would be a very case-by-case specific example where you need to make sure the investment you're making is actually meaningful and substantial in relation to the existing business you're investing in. Patrick, have you seen any issues like that come up with your clients?
Great question. We've had clients where they did a capital injection and then their capital contribution allowed them to have a majority stake in the business. And there's never been an issue. So
yeah, it's certainly possible. You just need to be cautious about how you do it.
Exactly. It just has to be structured appropriately. And I always advise clients, and we require it actually, that you have to have corporate and or franchise attorney to help with the structuring.
Yeah.
Let's do just one last one. So one last question. Can I apply for this visa if I'm Chinese? Unfortunately, there's no E2 visa. So they'd have to, they could acquire another citizenship like through Turkey or Grenada, but they don't have the treaty with the US for the E2 visa.
That's exactly right. So Patrick's talking about buying second citizenship, which is something we see a lot and is perhaps more accessible than you might think. As a Chinese national, there's no treaty between the US and China to support these visas. If you're married to somebody with a different nationality, that person can be the primary investor, and you as the spouse would get an E2 spouse visa, even though you're Chinese and you don't have a treaty. So that's one kind of trick. Otherwise, you can buy or acquire second citizenship. Turkey, Grenada, there are a couple other places that make citizenship by investment. Essentially, you give the country enough money and they give you citizenship. That's not within reach for everybody, but certainly it is for some people. It's not a quick, easy path necessarily, but it's one that is available. So something to think about.
And I think kind of concluding on that, if you have a business in China, you could potentially come on an L1 visa, or maybe you're the best in your field and you can skip all of this. So it's always good to consult first with an immigration attorney. And I'd recommend a consultation with Kalani, evaluate your profile. If we can help with the business side, awesome. If there's a more economical solution that gets you faster to the US without us, even better. So it's good to have that consultation with a US licensed attorney like Kalani Hawks Villafranca. We'll be sure to include Kalani's contact information. And I want to thank everyone that joined us today.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. This is great.
No, it was a pleasure. Appreciate it.